The brethren moon has spoken yet again. It has called to us. We are the sheep, and they are our shepherd. Oh my God! Praise me, praise me, the brethren, the convergence, the glorious convergence. Don't worry about my hair; it's fine. I don't think I've slept in over a month. When was the last time my favorite developers ever, my new favorite game developers have spoketh the gospel? Oh my God! Look at this awesomeness! Dude, oh, my fellow brothers and sisters, my fellow true believers, it is here. More information on the Dead Space remake. Oh my God. On the glorious convergence, where we shall be made whole. God damn it, we we shall be made whole. This is yet another developer presentation. This time, it's art design. I think they're talking about like the redesign. Oh, hold on, oh my God, it is so freaking hot in my room. It is like 15 degrees hotter than every other location in my house. Like, in my house, it's like high 60, low 70. In my freaking room, it's like 85 freaking degrees. I have freaking Niagara Falls down my back in the crack of my ass, dude. Like, it's just, I'm moist. I'm wet, lad. But no, it's fine. It's just fine. I'm totally not gonna have heat stroke in here. But yeah, this is gonna be talking about like the art designs and like them redesigning the, you know, all the visuals of the game and like the environments, and I'm so freaking hyped to learn about that, man. I'm so freaking hyped to see the progress of the development, what these freaking environments look like. We're definitely going to be getting some more gameplay, some more like actual walking through gameplay and things that look like we're going to be given a little bit of a taste, of what like the visuals are like actually gonna look like a bit. Like this, it's not gonna be the final product, I understand that, but I think we're gonna get like a taste of just how delicious these visuals are going to look, and that is so fucking hype. But one thing though is, freaking strap in, buckle the fuck in, holy shit, this is long as hell. I'm gonna try to cut down as much as I can. You know, they may ramble quite a bit or something. I might cut that down, but who knows? I don't know. They might just have a goddamn hour and 12 freaking minutes of actual interesting information about the remake. So I don't know. This is definitely going to be put into two parts like the last one was. And hopefully it's not that much more than an hour. It's gonna be probably quite a bit more of it. But yeah, so strap in. But anyway, I can finally stop completely losing my mind in my room. I still have no idea if the red paint that I've been using to draw symbols on my walls have been actual red paint, or if it's been raspberry jam, or the blood of the non-believers. Anyway, let's get into this. I've rambled enough. Let's fucking oh boy, I got my popcorn. I got my popcorn, lads. Oh my God. Oh dude, yeah, hell yeah, I want to watch the the Caesar thing again. This thing never gets old. Hell yeah, I want to watch this again. It's so badass. Apparently they're gonna do this every time our presentation happens. This is just their introduction every single time. Yes. Make us whole! Oh my God. Oh. Do you see the divinity? The divinity. Now, I'm an interesting unitologist, okay? I'm really interesting. Because I'm actually also on Isaac's side at the same time. You know? I hope that the Necromorphs win, you know? And bring us to convergence, but at the same time, I love watching Isaac just absolutely slaughter these cucks. So I'm a really interesting and weird... the boys are back!
Bonjour à tous. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for listening to this third video stream of Dead Space.
Hell
I'm
yeah.
with, Raman Campos Oliveira, creative director.
Hello, everyone.
Mike Yazijan, art director. I'm for
Mike,
content
my boy.
for Dead Space
Art director
today.
and shit,
More.
yeah.
More.
He's gonna be
The
important.
art direction of the original Dead Space was extremely strong. It had
Oh.
a distinctive
Oh,
visual
hell yeah.
signature that helped set it apart from other games. We'll start off our presentation today with Mike talking about the visual pillars and how it's used as the foundation for the game. Then we'll move at looking at assets that was created by our team through videos that explain how we use these visual pillars from an architectural and environment pieces, from lighting, from VFX, and characters. And just like last
hell yeah.
times, we're going to wrap all of this up with some in-game look at one of their more iconic rooms of the Ishimura. That
Whoa,
room's going to
please.
turn on, so it's
Medical
gonna be
bay?
pretty amazing.
Or maybe the
All right,
maybe the engine room?
Just like past live
Engine
streams,
room?
there is
Oh
a
my God.
disclaimer. We are still pre-alpha, so mainly what it means is that the content that you'll see is going to be uneven in terms of quality. There's going to be
yeah.
assets showcasing gyms from the editor straight out.
Yeah, there's
looking
gonna be some, like,
placeholder,
really
some
low
buggy
quality stuff.
That's
There'll be-
normal for the stage of the project.
Then there's gonna be
we're
some
in.
parts that are gonna look really
There's gonna
good.
be some amazing stuff also.
Well, there's also going to be some pretty amazing stuff. Hopefully that you agree with us.
Dude, I
However,
love the
we're
middle guy
progressing
so
very
much.
well for our alpha
He's so
deliverables.
fucking
Just
so
2
funny.
weeks ago, we were
So
able
awesome.
to do our first full
Get some
walkthrough of
badass
the game,
tattoos, too.
where all content was present. And next week, we are going to do this with our community council. The community council, for
only
those
with
of
the
you who don't
community
know,
council,
is a
okay.
group of passionate fans that have been with us since early.
I thought he
in
was
the
gonna do it with
conception of
us.
the
I'm
project,
like, what?
Providing feedback and
Nani?
getting undisclosed access to the game that we're making.
I fucking wish
And
I was on
just
that.
like past live streams, we actually have a member
wish
of the
I was one
council
of them.
that's here with us today. We have
I wish I was
Blaine
on that
Smith
council.
from Banger TV joining us. Hey Blaine, how are you?
Oh my god. This is
Good.
bad. Oh,
Happy to be able to talk about some of this, and definitely happy to be able to, have this sweet baseball tee from y'all featuring the Ishimura. Although I am getting a little insecure watching how it fits Romain versus how it fits the rest of us. Not quite filling it out the same way.
Let's kick it off, right? Let's start.
Yeah, absolutely.
I work very closely with the art team. I provide them with guidelines to make sure that the visuals look unified across the game. And I maintain the artistic vision throughout the project to keep a consistent look in all our chapters. So I think that kind of summarizes what I do. I think.
hell
And
yeah, dude.
from what I understand,
He's
this
gonna make
also
it look
actually
sexy.
isn't your first Dead Space game.
What? Did he like
Actually,
work
that was
on?
audio from Blaine.
Audio drop.
Oh no! Oh no!
Fire heard him.
You have to mind Blaine, I guess. Oh, you're gonna draw.
He is
That's
gonna, he
be
is
good.
gonna write it.
I'm gonna write it
All right.
down.
Well, actually, we'll kick it off on our side until we resume like the issue with the microphone. I think it's on our side. So, Mike,
Yeah, it's
why
just
don't
on
you
their
walk
side
us
only.
through,
Yeah.
actually, some of the
Absolutely.
art direction pillars.
That's great. So what we're going to do today is through various images and videos, we're going to show you how we're honoring the legacy and staying true to the original game. So what we want to do first is look at some of the art pillars that define and influence the Dead Space look.
The deliciousness.
So the first and
That
most
delicious
important
baguette.
one is horror storytelling. So even
Wow,
though the
that
Dead
nerd
Space
world.
universe is set hundreds of years in the future, the main art pillar is horror as opposed to sci-fi or fiction.
The combination
Since
sci-fi
it's
horror.
so important to us, we
It's
really
like
are like doubling down
the
on
bread
that,
and butter.
we just
Two
can't get enough.
slides.
We need to talk
Two
more
slides,
about
right? Horror is
so the
a
lighting,
double
the
pillar
mood,
in
the
the game.
atmosphere, the color palette of the locations are all
can you hear 'em?
affected by this pillar. It also influences the look of the necromorphs, gore, dismemberment,
God.
and
Is that
corruption.
that's a scene from the
And it
second
goes
Dead
as far
Space.
as influencing the design of the weapons, right? Because they're based on power tools.
So
so that kind of
genius.
sums up the first
So
pillar.
genius.
The second key visual pillar is one of immersion.
Oh,
So
yes.
to be scared,
Oh, yes.
you have to believe what's in front of you. Just like in the original Dead Space, our goal is to always maintain a sense of immersion.
Yeah, I've always said this. I'm gonna pause every now and then, all right? Because I want to transform this video. Okay, like I don't want it to just be their stream for the most part. I want to like pause it, talk about my own thing. Yeah, I've always said this before. The thing that's like the bread and butter with it is like that sci-fi horror where you have so many aspects of the game regarding like the gameplay mechanics and the visuals and the environment that are so realistic feeling. Now, I feel like that was broken a little bit in the first one just because of the visual limitations that they had. I really do think so. Like, in terms of just really selling the environment to you, it looked really good for the time. It does the job, but it could do the job so much better if the graphics looked even better, if everything looked incredibly sexy and extremely realistic, not just with the visuals but also with the sound, like we talked last time with the audio, everything sounding so realistic. Like, this type of game just absolutely thrives off of making the player feel and sound like they're in a real horrifying sci-fi situation where the technology isn't really that far-fetched, where it's not just like magic or something. It's not like freaking Hogwarts, it's not like people powering up with ki or something, like it's these ideas like telekinesis and using these plasma guns and stuff like that. These tools that use kind of like real science that might not entirely fit how the science works, but it could fit it if you didn't get too anal about the intricacies of how the science works. Like, on the base level, if you're like, oh, let's say that you could use the electromagnetic fields in this way or something to be able to hold this in place, as long as you're not too nitpicky about it, then you're just like, okay, let's just say that is that way, and then everything afterward becomes much more realistic in a kind of motion and the kind of physics that we understand. Like, if something gets hit by a plasma thing, it's going to just melt right through. That makes much more sense. You might get into trouble if you actually start explaining how the hell you're actually going to have the weapon actually fire the thing, right? But once you just kind of is that what it's called? Suspend your belief? Suspend your belief on that particular aspect, then you're able to get behind the whole concept of, like, of that weapon. It's so good. It's what made me love Dead Space so much more than most other games, because it just did that the best out of any game that I ever seen. Just combined very realistic science concepts into science fiction, horror, survival, nightmare situation. It's so good. It's such a perfect mix.
Keep the player captivated and the settings believable and grounded. The third pillar is a lived-in world. Now, since the Dead Space universe is rich in environmental storytelling,
having more environmental storytelling
and has a meaning
would be
when you
awesome.
Look around,
even more than the first game had.
You see the effects of aging and weathering everywhere you look. So another key thing is resource conservation, right? That is key in the universe, and all the objects are repurposed and reconfigured.
I feel like resource...
That's quite important to us. So those are the main three visual pillars of Dead Space.
I'm blanking out.
It's not a new ship. Like, it's been used,
been
around.
Exactly.
Resource conservation
it's interesting
could
when
be
you say the lived-in world,
a bit more strict than it was in the original Dead Space.
So Blaine, I know you're talking, but we still can't hear you, so that's something that we're trying to resolve on our site. So what actually, what are the things that we're
poor lad
that follows it? It's actually
he's
there's
being
a lot of
muted.
symbolism, right, in the original Dead Space.
Yes.
What if the whole time they were
let's have
like,
a look
oh,
at
we accidentally
what roles
put
it
press
plays
mute somewhere.
in the art for Dead Space.
Absolutely.
It only takes like
so
one button
there's a lot of
press to fix
symbolism
it.
in Dead Space, and I want to show you some of that and how it influences the look and mood of the game. So for example, we've talked about this on many occasions during the community council before. The Ishimura is like a haunted house, and the design is influenced by the Gothic architecture with lots of evocative shapes. So that's quite prominent. The second one is how Ishimura is a character. It's a broken machine that is alive and sick. both
Everything
physically
is
and
broken.
mentally, and the
Everything.
user interface is its voice. Sort of
Oh,
talks to
man.
it.
And Isaac has to freaking fix
Locations,
everything on
they're
his own.
purposely built with low ceilings and narrow spaces to make it feel claustrophobic, like you're
Standing
trapped
there.
inside a maze.
We'll see.
waiting to be
later,
slaughtered.
we actually reinforce that.
Yeah, I love the
Yes.
just the feeling of being
And
trapped,
then lastly,
isolated, and just
the necromorphs,
claustrophobic.
right? Since you're on a haunted ship, a haunted house,
In
they're
the
like the
game.
ghosts that haunt Isaac and torment him on his journey to hell, all the way to
Deeper
his
and
final
deeper into
destination.
hell. Yeah.
So that essentially summarizes some of the key, symbolism that you find in the game. What we wanted to do next is, cover, like, now that we've covered the symbolism, we want to look at how we're updating the classic by looking at visual upgrades for the remake. So what we could do is maybe play the video
So hot.
of the props and weapons. So in 2008,
Okay.
the original dev team created a game that was amazing for its time, and it's our commitment to respect their vision and rebuild on the same pillars. We're taking the original game and building the Gen 5 version and keeping the recipe that we all know
Hell yeah.
and love. As you can see from these before and after
Yeah, it's just
examples,
super
we're
low
using the
textured
original
stuff
art
and so much more
as a starting point
complex.
as we redesign and remake the
Look at that!
assets
Look how bad those
from the
chairs
ground
look.
up. We're retaining the overall shape
That's an
and
interesting
of
look,
these
though.
objects
That's
to
an
respect the
interesting
Dead Space
look.
art
What
direction.
about this one?
And we're adding more functionality,
Interesting.
layers of detail, and a lot more realistic
Oh, that looks
materials.
so rough.
As you can see in these examples, I'll put
Putting a bit
before
more
and
detail
afters,
on
you
it.
see
These
time
are
and time
still
again we're doing that.
aren't going to be final
See the
images.
portals,
Yes.
flamethrower.
Yeah, art and development.
Show you how
It's not
dodges
quite
and
as good as it's going to
portals.
look
One of our favorites.
in the
I
final
know Glenn, you
product.
love this one.
I just like how so much more
The
detail is
river,
put on
when
it.
it cuts people in pieces. Well, not people, but necromorphs in
Yes.
pieces.
Yeah, you see a lot of
really
things in the first Dead Space that are just like the detail on the object itself is just lacking.
Cool. So
There's not much of it.
So what I'd like
I feel
to talk
so
a little
bad
about,
for that
about
guy.
now is
He's just like,
the part that
why
we've
am
all
I
been
even
waiting
here?
for,
Why am
to
I
show
even here?
How we're creating our visuals in 4 in-depth videos. So the goal here is to give
4?
a sneak peek of our art process by showing work-in-progress captures from software. So in the first video, the
Yes.
environment
Silence all
team
the
will take us
doubters on
behind
this
the
game.
scenes
Yes,
and
please.
show how our chapters are constructed from beginning to end.
All the
The
pessimistic
second
assholes.
video, the VFX team is going to follow up with some pyro and fluid simulations in gyms and some quality upgrades.
Pyro.
Next up, character team will present how they built the level 3 engineering suit and of course the slasher. And in the last video, the lighting team will walk us through some of the cool tech behind the lighting
Oh,
in the
the
game,
lighting.
including real-time global illumination and volumetric
Oh,
lighting.
the lighting, the shadows, dude. My friend Nathan, he is so like, he is so obsessed with like lighting and shadows, just sexy looking shadows and shit, that he's gonna like, he like sees like just really good shadowing, like lighting, and oh man, just like creams his pants, dude. And he's like, oh yes, loses his mind.
So a lot to come there.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of goodies.
All right, well,
So-
let's kick it off with the environment
That's
video.
an interesting
Hi,
factoid
my
of
name
mine.
is Roy Toison,
One of my
and
best
I am the
friends.
Associate Art Director for the Dead Space Remake. Today, I want to
Hello.
talk to you about the environment art process, how
Oh,
we
yes,
are
we
remaking the
see
game
some-
with our new tools, techniques, and
Okay, this is
pipelines,
a basic.
and finally do a demo in the Frostbite engine on how we took a room from the legacy version to our current work in progress. Today, we are going to look at the MRI Room in
That was
Chapter 2.
sexy.
When Dead Space was released more than 14 years ago, the visuals were great. It set the bar high for its time. But
Hell
since
yeah, it
then,
did.
technology has evolved, and with that, it allowed us to remake the game and really accentuate the main pillars of horror, immersion, and a lived-in world.
I can't wait
Let
for
me
the
quickly
freaking
go
game.
over
man.
our process with you. On the environment
It's gonna be
side,
so good.
we break down our pipeline into 6 phases that go from L0 to L5. L0 is our R&D phase where we analyze the original game and identify what we can remake this area, either through gameplay, visuals, sound, etc. Based off any changes, we would do some exploration concepts to improve on the art pillars. L1. This phase is when the area will be playable, with rough blockout of the visual intentions. When recreating a room in Frostbite, the artist will break it down into kits, pieces that they can use to build the room. Think of this as Lego blocks. It will be simple shapes, sizes
Really?
that represent the theme of the room.
Freaking Lego,
L2
making the
is
environments
where
out of Lego
details
blocks.
and colors are added into the kits to support the thematic of the area. Large props are staged, and the initial mood will be set. L3 is where we start to update the different PBR materials to a more realistic look. Add more props to support the theme.
Add a
and
little
refine the
fog
lighting
rolls
and
in.
VFX. You should start to get that immersive feeling by having the area more relatable and believable.
Oh, show me the sexy shadows.
L4 is where we add all the narrative elements. All the architectural kits get a polish pass with a wear and tear. Small props, signs, markings, bloodstains, dirt,
Not
and
quite
grime
there yet,
are
though.
added to get that lived-in world feeling and give that horror storytelling element. L5 is where the polished elements of all the art
There's
departments
nothing.
integrated
When you
to give
came
that final
here,
high-quality
it actually
next-gen
completely cut
Dead
it off.
Space look and
We
feel.
had audio
This
before.
will be coming soon.
So me and Roman had
Just to get
audio.
a
Mike
proper
didn't.
understanding of where we are in the production of this area, we are here in the beginning stages of our L4 phase.
That's pretty good.
Now that you know how
That's
we
pretty
work,
good.
we want to
They're already,
next
that
demonstrate
far?
how we will remake these assets.
Cave, I'm trying to watch a
Here's an
presentation here.
example of a legacy asset.
You hear the video?
And here are some
No,
of the
I don't hear
elements we
anything.
plan
Okay,
on
so he
adding
does-
to get that immersive feeling throughout the ship.
Hey, that's not
We
my
wanna
fault,
show
okay?
Functionality. Rivets in the metal to show how it was put together.
They keep coming in and
Latches
interrupting.
on the window frames to show how the workers can remove it if it ever needed to be repaired. The variation in our PBR materials, the way light reacts to different types of painted metal versus the raw metal underneath. More realistic
yeah.
light fixtures. The dirty glass cover protects the light sources, giving that
All the little
depth and
fine
more realistic
details.
feel.
Yeah.
Add more shape and depth to the model to give it that believable look. To get that old lived-in ship look, we added wear and tear to the
The
paint
more
metal and
believable
dirt
that it
accumulation
feels,
in areas
the more
that would
immersive
not
that it will
normally
be.
get cleaned.
The more horrifying it'll be.
Now that we've highlighted
more
a few
awesome
examples
it'll
of
be.
how we're going to remake an asset,
Then comes the main lighting intentions and the props dressing.
The fuck happened?
We always ask
there a glitch in the
ourselves what
Matrix?
the function of that room is, how do we make it believable, and tell the story of the people that live there and how the events took place.
God,
Projected details
yes.
of labeling
I
and
hope
lore
that they,
are
like I
get
said
further,
before,
we can add a few
I hope
world-asking
that they
volumes to wear down the floor in a
add
realistic way,
more
where people
of the
used to
background
stand and
information
walk around in
of the
this setup.
people of this ship and what
Maybe
happened
a
to
water
them.
canister fell over
What happened to
near
more of
desk
that, like,
and leaked all over the
and what
floor.
happened to more
But
of the
that
locations.
was a while ago, and rust built up all around it.
Because they did that quite a bit in Dead Space 1, but not quite as much
after
as,
seeing our pipeline,
you know,
tools,
there's a lot of
and
areas
in-engine
that
demo,
were just kind of neglected.
using
in
the
terms
small
of,
room besides
like,
the
what
MRI
happened there.
machine, you can
And they
see
could
in this
add more.
before and after comparison. We
Oh my
remade
God,
this
that
room
looks so
to
hot,
accentuate
dude.
the art pillars even more.
Is that Will Smith meme?
We want the player to believe
that's
that the
that.
Ishimura crew
That's that.
worked here. That the functionality of this room makes sense.
God, that looks so sexy.
and you can even imagine yourself
the right
working in
one.
this environment. If I take this part of the room,
So
for
good.
example, before there used to be some shelves, lockers, and props around the wall with some writing on the ground.
Is it safe?
We remade it to have more
No,
immersive
it's
and
incredibly
believable
not.
theme. We made this corner of the room more functional by adding an examination bed with medical equipment.
It looks more.
We gave that
it looks more
lived-in world by
futuristic.
aging the walls and floors with some wear and tear, added dirt and grime.
Add a lot more.
This is the
prevalent
oldest
blood.
functioning mining ship. We wanted to make sure that came through in the environment. Finally,
More
we
gritty.
injected the horror pillar into this room with a bloody narrative scene
Oh.
on the bed and floor.
Someone was
We
dragged
want to
away.
insinuate that something horrible happened here and give that sense of danger looming around every corner. Thank you for joining us on this behind-the-scene look at the environment art process.
My goodness. That's hot. That's hot.
We're back.
Hey, we're back.
So Blaine, can
So
we
they've-
hear you now?
They,
Do you hear
they
us?
finally can hear him.
I hear you. Are
And
you
we
there?
hear you.
Hey.
All right.
Hey,
What's up,
Isaac
Blaine?
got comms working. Nice.
Finally.
Now, Isaac, get to the engine
We
room.
actually figured out how to use the
There's work to
microphones.
be done
and
there.
Yes. It's the Ishimura, right?
And communication.
You know, it wouldn't be Dead Space if everything
In the
was
year
working smoothly
2022.
as. So, you know, this was just a little Easter egg for you in the chat. Thanks for coming out and catching the live stream, showing you that true Dead Space experience. And man, we in the council got to play a little bit of this early on, and that was a much emptier room when we walked into it, a lot less scary. It's really cool to see that. To keep with that horror pillar, you're creating these little scenes in rooms, these little stories. Is the story department working with the art department to like write little things like that?
Absolutely. Our narrative group works with our level art group and make sure that they're collaborating on looking at every single chapter of the game, area by area, and coming up with little stories that they want to tell to make it feel like each area has life and there's a story, and just to show how the crew lived right before the events that you see in the game, and of course after the attack and so on. So there's a lot of work that's placed there by the team as they're crafting this.
It's a real collaborative effort between
Yes.
narrative, level design, level art, audio. Everybody is really involved into that. And not only we're looking at what we want to do, but also most of the time we're looking at what was in the original. And often we keep that and enhance it. Sometimes based on some evolution of the narrative that we want to make, we can slightly change or evolve those elements. But that's
Yes, evolve,
our
yes.
goal is to keep
That
that
is-
pillar of the original that was
Exactly.
room, each corridor, each places had something unique. Something you could remember that room or that place because of that sound, because of that writing on the wall, because of the blood of the little narrative in that place. And that's something that we want to keep and that we want to reinforce going
Like,
forward.
I'm always talking about, like, you don't
Yeah, it's
need
really
to
great
take
to hear
anything
about all
away.
the teams working together
Just
on this, and I
evolve
love thinking about someone just
what
walking
was
around the office
already
with an absolutely
incredible in
terrifying
the game.
notebook
Just evolve it.
little rooms in one
Improve
C.
it.
What
Yes.
happened in one C?
with
Dear
the advancements
God.
in technology.
The jump scare Bible.
Yes, pretty much.
The jump
And,
scare
and that's one of the
Bible.
opportunities, like we saw in the video, is that we look at an area that existed before and how can we amp it up and enhance it, right? To have a richer experience in the storytelling. We intentionally make sure to keep them feeling realistic as possible, and not going too sci-fi. Because if we do that, then it alienates the player. and you
Living
don't
goddamn
really know until you relate
Hogwarts,
to that
like,
environment. So we purposely make sure that we
grab
continue
something
in the same
with
vein
like a
of keeping
beam of
objects,
light.
whether it's the MRI room or fire extinguisher.
I mean, I know it's like
or
telekinesis,
chairs
but I
and-
mean,
and
you know what I
so
mean.
on, as real to us as possible, so we can relate to that and we can be immersed in the world. And then, of course, we'll be scared when we have like a necromorph that comes out of nowhere. We'll have our guard.
Yeah, he's not just gonna like
It's about
manifest
making
like a
these
freaking
places
axe out of
understandable
nothing.
for the player.
He's like,
You
yeah, I have
can
an axe now.
project yourself in trying to imagine
Yeah, like
how those
nanobots or
things
something.
work. Like if there's massive
Isaac
engine,
gets his hands on some
where's
nanobots.
The console that control that. If it's the MRI, same thing. Where the people actually working with those stuff? What are the tools they are using? Where are they sitting? All those kind of things. That's the elements that are making those places believable, even though a real spaceship does not necessarily exist, or at least not in this
You
form.
could still imagine it
Functional,
too
right?
with
So,
this.
so
Yeah.
when we do concepts for these pieces that are more
Even if it doesn't
complicated,
exist
or
today,
the hero
doesn't mean you
pieces,
can't imagine.
it is a lot the work that the concept
It's
teams are looking at. They're trying to make sure
structure
that
and
this
form
machine would
and
work. How
functionality.
would it work so that it is functional when we
Or
put
how
in a game
might
that
it
makes
work
sense.
if we were able to figure out the engineering
Yeah,
behind
it's
it?
just we had some little explosions tech wise. I think you guys also have some explosions to show us.
Ooh.
That's a
a
good
nice
segue. Wow.
Oh hell yeah! I
Not
want to
the
be
first
blowing
time
up
you
some
do this.
necromorphs. I want to be blowing up them
So
bitches.
let's take a look at the
Legs,
effects,
arms flying everywhere,
Hi,
spaghetti
everybody.
all over the
I'm Greg
walls.
Herdrudder, and I'm the lead VFX artist on the Dead Space
Fog,
remake.
the
What I'm going to
smoke.
show you today is
What's
some
the
of the
difference between fog and
atmospheric
smoke?
and environmental VFX that have been created by our team. These are VFX such as fog, smoke, and pyrotechnics that help populate the Ishimura and help tell the Dead Space narrative. Now, before I show you what we're doing, let's take a look at the original Dead Space and what they did for their environmental VFX. They did an amazing
Not a
job in
lot,
setting
but,
a very
you know.
desaturated color palette, with everything very muted and everything feels very natural. Nothing feels fantastical or takes you out of that horror mood. For the remake,
Yeah.
we wanted to stay true to this, but look for opportunities to push things further using modern day techniques. The original was quite limited in terms of complexity of VFX, well, we have a lot more room to move.
I want the explosions to actually look
The
pretty
first thing
real.
I'd like to show you is how some of our VFX can react to changing
I want everything to
environmental
look real.
conditions.
In terms of like
So here we have a
physically and
debug
visually.
scene, and as you can see, it's pretty much empty with some sparks and drips. These are pretty typical VFX that we'll see in a number of locations in the Ishimura to show damaged areas. What I'd like to show you is how these effects can react to changing environmental conditions, and in this case, what happens when gravity is disabled. I'm going to disable the gravity here.
Oh, that's
And right now we
awesome.
can see that these VFX are behaving differently, and they're no longer falling to the floor.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot more happening than just the gravity. I can make a number of artistic choices as to how the VFX behave.
Parts of the
For
pipe
example,
that
with
is
the drips,
kind of floating
I wanted
around.
to extend their lifetime so they spread out across the room rather than disappear quickly. For the sparks, I reduced their turbulent motion because when they had a lot of turbulence, it felt like they were still in normal conditions. There's a number of things that we can modify so that when the player interacts with these effects, they'll feel believable and well integrated. These little details can really add up to help tell the story and make the Ishimura feel like it's alive.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Next, I'd like to show you a little bit
freaking
about
cutting
our
up my throat
pyrotechnics
with
pipeline.
this popcorn, man.
I'm looking
Jesus.
at one of our explosion effects. This is something we'd see when a small prop is getting destroyed. Here we have a bunch of different
God.
elements, like a fireball, smoke, sparks, and debris.
Why would it? Oh,
I'll
maybe
hide
you
a
could
few
like
of
the
these
one of
so
the
we can
fire,
concentrate
like
just
the,
on the fire and smoke.
the
I'll set
explosion
this to
tank
loop
thing
so
that
we
you can
see it
throw at
continually
Necromorphs.
playing. Something that is important to Dead Space is that we have a lot of dark environments that have changing lighting conditions. We were finding that elements such as fire and explosions would look way too bright when the environment was dark, and then would be barely visible
freaking
when the
blind us.
environment was brighter. So what we had to do was to be sure that our source pyro textures were rendered in full HDR quality to ensure that the final image would contain the full range of brightness values. I'll slow this down a bit so we can see things a bit more clearly. If I zoom in, the exposure will adjust so it doesn't appear too blown out, and when I back off, it will readjust. If I change this to a darker environment, you'll see that we don't get a crazy amount of overbrightness, and we're still able to see a lot of detail in the texture. And finally, I'll go to pitch black.
Everyone just completely
It still holds up and behaves naturally.
See, all that
So
looks
this all
good.
means that we can play a lot with
So
the lighting
hot.
in our environments,
So sexy.
and the VFX will still integrate into the experience well and be legible by the player. The final thing I wanted to show is our interactive atmospherics. So here I am in another test map. I have a few debug lights floating around so we can see what's happening here. I'll just back up and start one of our Steam effects. So what do we have here? It's a volume-based 3D simulation. It exists inside a container, and density
away
and
the
velocity
visibility
values are
of
pushed
the
around
player.
to create what we
Have a
see here.
necromorph come through that fog
Something
at
that's
you.
cool about this simulation
Piss your
is
pants
that it lives
immediately.
in the physics world.
Shit all
So
over
if
the
the player
wall.
walks through it, it will interact. Also, if I pick up an object, like this battery, it will also behave quite naturally.
Oh, hell yeah.
This will work
Yeah, I
if I
won't just
spawn
go
an enemy.
through it
I
awkwardly
disabled its
without
AI, so it won't
disturbing the
attack
fog
me.
at all, or the smoke.
As you can see, the steam will collide and interact with him too.
Oh, that's so good.
This effect also works quite well with our lighting and renders with the rest of the fog we have
Yeah,
throughout our game.
they're definitely going to be doing that, like having a
can be used in a
necromorph come
number of
through this
cases.
foggy ass hallway.
We can
You
create
just
a steam or
only
smoke
just see
effect
it
like this,
right when
or
it
we
gets
can
to
cover
you.
the floor with a thin layer of interactive fog. In some cases, we can even fill an entire room with a cool simulation like this to give us some interesting and terrifying gameplay situations.
Will you cover the
So thanks for
entire
watching.
room with
I
fog?
hope you enjoyed seeing some
and
of
smoke?
the VFX we're working on.
Smoke.
That is fucking
Man, that
terrifying,
fog
dude.
when you
that-
first showed it to us. Oh,
totally gonna
wow.
do that.
It just so I've
They're
never
totally
been so
gonna
excited
cover
about
an
fog
entire
in
room
my life.
of fog and
It's
smoke.
crazy to think that one of the first
have
truly
necromorphs
great
come in
horror sci-fi
and clap our
movies,
cheeks.
Alien, came out almost 40 years ago, and that scene where they step
Oh,
out in
yeah,
the
the
eggs and there's
smoke
that
is-
layer of
yeah.
fog that they disturb, and now we're finally 40 years later able to kind of do that kind of stuff in
I
video
don't really
games.
see
How
a
are you
video
planning
game
on using this
really done
in the
that type of
gameplay?
stuff all that much.
So of
Like
course,
Alien
something we're
Isolation?
gonna use to create
Oh, yeah.
specific ambience in rooms for the storytelling and those kind of elements. But in gameplay, where it's really amazing, it's in sequences like, for example, the decontamination chamber in Chapter 3. So when you enter that room,
Oh, no.
the contamination sequence starts and the room fills with fog. And the fog stays at around 1 meter off the floor. And where it gets awesome, it's when you actually have a lurker dropping from the ceiling inside the fog. And now you see the poof of smoke when he gets inside it. You're like, where the fuck? Where is he gone? And you start to shoot at it. And you're trying to
And you
find
can't
it.
really
And
see
at
where it
some point
is.
you see those 3 tentacles
Oh my god.
coming out of the fog.
Because
And
that
those
would not
moments
happen in the
are
first
really,
Dead
really
Space.
scary. And that's the kind of thing we're looking at.
Because there was not
with
fog
that
like that in
technology.
the original Dead
It's
Space.
how we
Everything
can
came
use
in,
it to
you'd be able to
reinforce
see it.
ambience and really scary.
You'd be able to see
gameplay
exactly
moments.
where it is.